Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very well-respected coach and an author from Copenhagen, Denmark, Mr. Stephen Bruyant-Langer. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Stephen is a top executive coach. He's an author of 3 books. The latest one is the Existential Playbook, How to Survive, Live, and Thrive. And he's the founder of the Personal Business Plan. So, Stephen, before we start talking about coaching and your book, tell me a little bit about your own journey and what got you into coaching.
Well, I'll try to do it briefly after a long life with much experience. I had 15 years of global consumer marketing with market leaders such as L'Oreal and Coca-Cola Company. And then in 96, 2 gentlemen in dark suits flew over from Atlanta to our Nordic headquarters in Denmark and told me that I was no longer with the company. It was not personal. Okay, it feels sort of personal when you're at the receiving end, but corporate life and life goes on. I decided to change because I had been a director or consumer marketing expert for many years, and it's sort of the roads were closing. I had worked for global companies, and doing one more time the same thing sounded a sort of not very exciting. And then I changed to be a headhunter. I had been contacted by numerous headhunters and knew that world from the candidate side. And I was employed by 3 different partners in 3 different companies, amongst others, Perry, who's also the global market leader. And progressively, I started giving more and more advice to candidates and also to clients on a personal basis and linking the personal and the professional part. And after having done that for 20 years, working globally and working, well, all the time, actually, then I decided to found my own company together with my wife, who plays a pivotal role in the company. And started a company where we have developed a system called the Personal Business Plan. And it's a very structured, disciplined system. So it's 3, I call it epochs in life, right? Consumer marketing, headhunter, and top executive coach. Correct. But it aligns very well. And in my own mind or world view of the world, then it seems very logical. But of course, that's the inside perspective.
Absolutely. And, let's talk a little bit about coaching and leadership. You do a lot of coaching and you're well respected everywhere. Let me start by asking you that based on your own experience, what are some of the common challenges leaders face today and how can they overcome these challenges?
Well, Ash, it's a broad question, but I think the most important factor there would be combating insecurity, overcoming insecurity, and let's say allowing others to have the space. I work with lots of CEOs, and they grew up in a time where it was a top-down perspective on leadership, and now of course it's much more bottom-up. You need to listen to people. You need to respect people. You need to give them room. Motivate, especially the younger generations. So I think the CEO perspective has changed, and the persons or the individuals, the leaders who haven't experienced that or feel it, intrinsically, not only from a rational point of view, they don't have very much hope in the future. They will not succeed. So, the world has changed, and we as seniors and senior leaders need to change. And Ash, it might be different. In India, our view of the world is different. Even though I work with partners in New Delhi, amongst others, but the top-down, let's say, methodology or the fallback position is sort of antiquated. And to overcome that is probably one of the biggest
Correct.
challenges, the
Correct.
mindset.
Correct. Well said. You also have developed a 10-step system for personal and professional development. And we will also talk about the personal business plan, unless, of course, these two are integrated or the same thing.
Yeah. Well, it's a continuation. I've written 3 books, and I know also, Ash, that you've written several books, and congrats on that. I know it's hard work to do.
Mm,
So it's an evolution where my first book was about career. The next one was about success and happiness. That's the personal business plan, a
mm,
blueprint for running your life.
mm,
And then the third level is now about meaning. That's the existential playbook, how to survive, live, and thrive.
mm,
And as you have seen numerous times, it's a question of a personal development where your perspective on things change.
mm,
So in the beginning, I changed career, therefore I wrote about it. Then I longed for success and happiness. That was the theme I wrote about for about 10 years.
mm,
And now I've, let's say, gone to the highest level, meta perspective,
mm,
thinking and counseling on meaning. I just had a conversation just a few minutes ago with a CEO who leaves his CEO role in order to become a professional board member.
mm,
And we talked about where he could add most value. So it's now it's more about contributing, giving, paying forward,
mm,
instead of doing, the well, feeding the beast in corporate
mm,
life, right?
mm, mm,
So it's a new perspective, and it's extraordinary what happens when you sort of get a relaxed mindset
mm,
and able to create new ideas and create new associations, the way
mm, mm,
the brain works when
mm,
you're not under constant pressure, constant meetings.
mm.
I have clients who have 8 Teams meetings of 1 hour per day, and they're just brainwashed
I,
afterwards.
I know, I
And
know.
you've been there yourself, you know what it's
Yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah. Well said, well said. But tell me a little bit more about the personal business plan. You know, 5, 7 years ago, the personal brand, burst upon the world stage.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
I'm now seeing the personal business plan
Right.
coming out of the world stage. And obviously,
That's
this means that we must learn to manage our lives better. But as the creator, tell me a little bit more about it.
well, the idea probably originated from my academic background. I have been teaching at the Copenhagen Business School and Cambridge University for many years from a business perspective. It's most strategic market management and corporate communication and competitive theory, and so the business perspective. And the more conversations I had with both executive search clients and executive search candidates, the more I needed to formalize it, to model the coaching, because one thing is loose conversations, another thing is structured, targeted
Mm,
processes, and it's I wanted to combine the two, and that's where the idea of the personal part and the business part came along, and probably due to the fact that many of my clients are, well, nearly all are professionals, but they have difficulties in transferring their business perspective and their results orientation to their own lives, right? There's
mm,
so many tips and tricks you can use in your business life.
mm,
And why then don't you use it on your own life?
mm.
It's strategy. You can convert it.
Correct.
I had an example writing my last book, the
Uh-huh.
Existential book, where I read a book by some PwC strategists, and there was a paragraph where one-on-one you could
Mm,
transfer it if you substituted the word organizations with the word individual, then it could have been a psychology book, So it's there are so many parallel
correct.
worlds where we think the
Correct.
same thoughts, we have the same ideas,
Mm,
but we don't cross-fertilize. We don't, get the maximum value out of that because
mm,
we're sort of confined into our own box.
Mm.
And that is how the personal business plan came
Fascinating.
about. And
Fascinating.
it's an evolving process, but when you get to model it and you get to structure it, then you get clarity.
Correct.
And I think that is, well, clarity is a goal, isn't it?
Correct. Well said. But as I was reading about you and preparing for our conversation, I was also fascinated that you have managed to integrate philosophical insights into the work that you're doing. Tell me more and give me an example if you can.
Well, again, Ash, this is a cultural part because my mother is French, so I have double nationality, Danish and French. And as you might know, the Danish culture is very flat, very horizontal, very democratic. The French is a bit more autocratic, a bit more elitist, a bit more arrogant, perhaps.
Mm.
And I grew up under influence of the French existentialist philosophers.
Mm.
You know Jean-Paul Sartre, you know Albert Camus,
Yeah.
and sort of Jean-Paul Sartre was the Elvis Presley of philosophy, right?
Mm.
And Albert Camus was probably the James Dean, So it was hardcore,
Correct.
freedom seeking. Inspiring, free individuals, authentic individuals.
Mm.
And I've had a longing for philosophy due to that, my anchoring. And I wanted to bring that into my sphere, my business sphere, and actually only did it specifically on the writing my last book, the Existential Playbook.
Mm.
In the personal business plan, there's a four-leaf clover, and a four-leaf clover is it's two eternity signs, right?
Mm.
It's an eternity sign this way and an eternity sign this way. This
Absolutely.
is a
Yeah.
four-leaf clover. And in the personal business plan is life ambition, it's personal reinvention, it's learning agility, and it's courage to commit.
Mm.
I wanted to keep the same sort of picture. So I had the same idea of integrating four different schools of thought.
Mm.
And it became philosophy, psychology, neurology, and strategy. So strategy is my business part, the
Mm.
academic part.
Mm.
Philosophy was my interest from the beginning. Psychology, I've worked with lots and lots of business psychologists. So
Mm.
I've been integrated into that world by working with the psychologists. And of course, neurology as a science, I knew nothing about.
Correct.
So what I've done is I've taken my own medicine. My first advice in the Existential Playbook, my most important advice is ask for help. And therefore, instead of writing the book alone, I had an expert panel,
Mm.
four experts, a psychologist, a
Mm.
philosopher, a neurologist, and a strategist, helping me
Mm.
identifying what their respective views on meaning was.
Yeah.
Because as an academic, I didn't want to put anything out in the world which could be, turned down or
Mm.
not
Mm.
being correct.
Mm.
So the trick here is to ask professionals to help
Mm.
to integrate those different perspectives because it is difficult to combine natural science and philosophy, for example.
Mm.
So I worked with a neurologist and a neuropsychologist, and together with my wife,
Mm.
who's pivotal in our business and in our world. Um, and we have created a product called brain tuning,
Mhm.
where the neurologist makes a scan of the brain of the client, and that's the hardware part, right? So we can identify whether there's any illnesses or risk of illnesses. Um, Actually, in my last book, I tell that we were also examined from a hardware point of view and a software point of view
Mm.
by a neuropsychologist, my wife and I. And the neurologist actually identified some small blood clots in my brain, which were past and there had been nothing, I had sensed nothing, etc. But this means that I can take more care of myself in the future. So the natural science way of looking at people is, of course, completely different. And as an anecdote, in the beginning, I wanted with a neurologist who has become friends. Most of the candidates and clients I work with become friends. It's just the
Yeah.
relationships grow.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I asked the neurologist to send me an article, the Neurology for Dummies article, the simple thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand anything. It was simply, I didn't get it. And when I asked him to send some sort of the things I could quote in my literature review, he also sent me a link to Google Scholar, where there's about 16 pages of articles. So the perspectives are different, and that is where value is created. So I hope, luckily, the result in the existential playbook is that the 4 ways of looking at life and meaning actually converges. So I end up in the book with, you can probably see there's a bookmark here.
Yeah.
Where I have 10 existential hacks, which are in the book. And just for simplicity, and please stop me if you
please talk about them.
Go in other directions. But I'll just read aloud the 10 existential hacks, and I trust that you and the listeners will also get something out of it.
Yeah.
It says, reach out is the first one. So help. Don't try to do things yourself. Correct. That is very much in the new leadership paradigm that we talked about. Then expose yourself to all.
Correct.
Means, go to a concert, see a sundown, experience nature, do something where you're very small in the big context. Third, play and have fun. We're so serious. The work life is so serious. We try to pretend that everything is important, and correct. In reality, with your perspective also, let's say culturally, you probably have a much broader. I've had so many conversations with our New Delhi partner about life and rebirth, and so where we are. But it's important to play and have fun. The right time is now. Means that don't procrastinate. Correct. Either forget about it or do it. I had in the old days, I had to-do lists that progressively grew from the bottom.
I know.
It's simply continued. Practice courage.
Yeah.
Which means put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And you and I both have large experience, which means that we can sort of trust our intuitive reaction. I very often come with a hypothesis without knowing the answer, but it's sort of 80-90% correct, and then we can navigate from there. But put yourself out in the open, come out with statements, with positions, with thoughts that are perhaps not 100% correct, you're not absolutely sure, but be courageous and try new things also. The next one is perhaps a bit more, let's say, day-to-day life, but be someone rather than something. Stand out. Yeah. Do something, have an impact, help others, create, leave something behind. Relearn how to learn. Especially now with lifelong learning and AI, we can't trust that we know everything. We need to be much more intuitive, much more curious, and much more accepting that we don't know anything. The best example is Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI. He said he was interviewed, and a journalist asked him, how will OpenAI ever become profitable? And his answer is, I don't know. First we'll build it, then we'll ask it.
Correct. I remember that comment.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It's brilliant, isn't it? So relearn how to learn, accept that we can work the hard way, or we can, let the solution come to us. And then shake things up. When things have been when you come into routine, when things are repetitive, when you are tired of the next day's meeting, or you're not happy on Monday morning, shake things up, say, start something new, do something different.
Correct.
Stay physically active goes without saying. It's absolutely necessary to strengthen ourselves. And then from an existentialist point of view, believe in free will.
Mm,
Believe that you are important.
mm,
Actually, I see on the screen here the brand called you.
mm,
You are important. You
mm.
can you can have an impact. Your meaning means something. Your opinion is important.
Correct.
So contribute and believe that you're able to, let's say, edit your past and curate your present and design your future. That you have
Yeah.
you have the bare necessities to
Mm,
to create something that is worthwhile,
mm.
right?
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. There are amazing 10 existential points that you've shared with us. So we've got time for a few questions on the Existential Playbook, which is your book.
Yes, yes.
And time for maybe two or three questions. But how does the book address the challenges of finding meaning and direction in today's fast-paced world?
Good question, Ash. I think the trick here is placing yourself in the future.
Mm,
Um, the Most often people, let's say clients, they construct their world and their life forward. But when you get a more holistic perspective, you look at it from the end. So I'm always, 10 years ahead. I'm always talking when I have discussions with people. I always construct the direction in which they're going, and then I extrapolate. So I see it from 10 years ahead, right? If that person continues to have this mindset, do this way, this thing in this way,
mm.
then it'll end there.
Yeah.
And actually, what I would suggest is that you do the opposite, that you place
Mm,
yourself in 2040, and then you tell yourself how you got there. And of course, it should be the ideal position.
mm.
This is from strategy, you've done lots of strategy yourself. You know that you can have this future back perspective, right? So you place yourself in the future and then you tell yourself how you arrived there. It's a totally different way of operating.
Yeah.
And then be open to the inspiration of all the thinkers and all the people, the millions of people who lived before us. They were not stupid. So
Mm,
there is a heritage that you can
correct.
grasp and you can use. So
Absolutely.
and that is why it was essential for me to, in the Existential Playbook, get back to sort of what I call the fridge door
Mm,
version, right?
yeah.
Uh, so the essentials instead of all the historical part and the
Mm,
research part.
very
So the
interesting.
so I've tried to distillate or distill or synthesize the knowledge from these four
Mm,
fields or domains.
mm.
And I hope, Ash, that at one point in time you'll have the opportunity to read the book
I
and give
hope
me
so too.
feedback.
I'm going to look for it and get a copy
Good,
for myself.
good.
And my last question for you,
Yes.
Stephen. Uh, we spoke about philosophical insights earlier, but once again in this book, you speak about blending ancient philosophical wisdom with modern science and technology.
Yes.
And I'm fascinated by this because I have been doing a lot of study of scriptures, of the wisdom that we have, and my last book was actually titled The Seven Chakras of Management, Wisdom
Okay.
from Indic Scriptures. So
Wow.
I'd love to get your perspective on how are you using ancient philosophical wisdom?
Yes. To be honest, the word ancient here is probably Greek and Roman
Mm,
philosophy.
mm,
I know your history goes a way back
yeah,
further,
but mm,
and that is why I love speaking to our partner from New Delhi, because the perspective is so the 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 historical um, perspective is so much bigger
correct.
uh, in your culture, and I respect that very much. But then looking at my main philosophical basis, it is the existentialist. So it's starting from the these persons, Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, Hannah Arendt, who's a great historical philosopher.
Mm, mm,
Um, they were all born about 1905, 1906,
mm,
and then produced their major works in the 30s and
mm,
40s, just the Second World War.
Mm.
And so I probably will not identify, ancient in the same way as you do.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Mm.
But from then on, then it's incredibly important to juxtapose that with technology, because we technology is defining our life, right?
Mm. Mm.
And there's been a sort of taboo around the brain, and I wanted to bring that perspective in. You can analyze, as a surgeon, you can analyze a kidney, you can analyze a
Yeah.
liver,
Mm.
make autopsies, etc. But the brain has sort of been a closed universe.
Right.
You don't take samples from a brain. You open the skull and then you see what's inside, but it's very difficult to. The surgeons tell us it's very difficult as a brain surgeon
Correct.
to know exactly what you'll find. So there's been this sort of taboo around the brain, and I wanted to open up and to see how we could use the technologies of today, the scanning modes, and also the neuropsychological way of defining how the brain works. I have clients who have been told how their brain centers work in different situations, and it's so important to well, compare and contrast these two models. Uh, to be honest, the conversations we had in our expert panel writing the Existential Playbook have been extremely enlightening for us, for the humanists. Even though I'm a business person, I consider myself a humanist also. And this natural sciences approach, because the natural scientist, the neurologist, he says, how can you say this? You don't know. How can you speculate about the mind, about identity, about feelings, emotions? For him, it's electrical signals in the brain
Correct.
and chemistry. So,
Absolutely.
and then we could, look at him and listen to him and think, how could it be so logical and structured and absolute? And it's I love this way of gaining most value by exchanging thought about your own small cubicle where you think. And I think, Ash, just from my knowledge of you, my research on you, that you've succeeded in doing the same thing. You've been exposed to so many different roles in your life.
Absolutely.
And it's magic, isn't it?
No, I think we should consider ourselves fortunate to have been, exposed not just to so many different types of things to do, but so many different cultures in so many different countries.
It's wonderful.
And you suddenly realize how big and rich all of us are in terms of philosophy, in terms of our cultures, in terms of our history. But on that note, Stephen, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your journey. I love the way you told me how two people in black suits arrived from Atlanta. And that really was a life-changing experience for you. And, it's so wonderful to see you doing so many new things. Thank you for talking to me about 10 existential points. We talked about some common challenges leaders face. We spoke in brief about your personal business plan that you have developed. You also talked to me about philosophy and how you are wanting to integrate, or you are integrating this with so many different aspects of modern science, technology, and leadership. And you talked to me about some of the challenges of finding meaning and direction in today's fast-paced world. Thank you for speaking to me, and all the best to you.
Thank you, Ash. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.